Sanhedrin Daf Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph and Amud Beis. We live in a world where we are bombarded with what the world thinks. We get information, we get images, and one of the areas that we get impacted is in something as simple as a sense of aesthetics, what people find beautiful. And that changes from time to time, and it changes from culture to culture. But we need to be sensitive to the fact that not everything that the contemporary world finds beautiful does the Torah find beautiful. And not everything that the contemporary world finds less beautiful does the Torah find less beautiful. Part of beauty in the Torah's view of beauty is context and appropriateness. That something is beautiful in the context of which it is. That you don't look at beauty isolated, that you don't focus down on it to such a degree that you're unable to see the context and the appropriateness of the object that you're looking and the environment, the context in which it is. These dapim are wonderful because all the very well-known, or so many of the very well-known agalitas are in these pages when one gets a chance to look at them more deeply. The Gemara says that Ad Avraham lo haya zikna. Until Avraham came along, there wasn't old age in the world. It doesn't mean that people didn't get older. We know from earlier psukim, of course, they did. But it wasn't visible. Kol dechazi la-Avraham amar hay Yitzchak. Kol dechazi li-Yitzchak amar hay Avraham. Anybody who saw Avram thought it was Yitzchak, and anybody who saw Yitzchak thought it was Avraham. And we know that Yitzchak and Avraham looked similar. They had similar features. Bo Avraham rachmei deliהווי le-zikna. So that Avraham davened to the Hashem that he should acquire old age, that he should start to look older, rather than look at the same age as his son Yitzchak. Shneimar Avraham zaken ba biyamim. The discussions as to how the Gemara learns it out of the psukim, that Avraham was old and had a long life. If we look at that and we think, imagine all the, other than plastic surgeons, everybody must look at Avraham and say, why did you do that, Avraham? Why didn't you just leave it as it was? People try so hard to look younger. They spend so much money on looking younger. All of that wouldn't have been necessary if Avraham would just have kept his mouth closed. As I say, only the plastic surgeons are grateful to Avraham because he created a whole industry for them. And yet Avraham's not happy with that. And it doesn't mean that they confused Avraham with Yitzchak. That wasn't the issue. The issue was Avraham felt that they didn't appreciate people when they saw Avraham would walk into a room, would meet somebody, they couldn't see the life experience on his face. They couldn't see the wisdom on his face. When you see the face of an old person, and that's why often when people do photographic portraits of interesting faces, they're almost always old people. You'll only see a portrait of a film star, of a celebrity, if it's been commissioned. But if a photographer just looks at a face and thinks, wow, this is such an interesting face, I want to capture this face. It's very often a very old person in various different cultures, because you see the life experience on the face. You see what that person's been through. You see the suffering, you see the hardship, you see the joy. You see the wisdom, you see so much in that face. In a young person's face, there's nothing to see yet. So an older face is so much more interesting, but it's not just the interest, it's the aura that comes with an older person. The fact that the person walks in, you know this is a person who's been around, who's experienced things. When you meet somebody of old age, we've mentioned it once before, they have stories. Everybody has a story, but there's a difference between an 80-year story and a 30-year story. And the 80-year story is going to be more interesting. There's going to be more to learn from an 80-year story. And everybody is an expert in their own story. So you meet an 80-year-old person, he's an expert in an amazing story that took 80 years to develop. And during that time, what the world has been through and where history has developed during those 80 years. And this is a person who lived through it all, saw it all. What an interesting thing it is. And how much a person has learned from the experiences of their life, so that when you see that on a person's face, that's the hadras ponim, that's the glory of the facial expression that one sees on an older person. And Avraham felt he didn't have that. He would walk in, he would be treated like a young person. People wouldn't understand and wouldn't tune in to the life experience and wisdom that Avraham had as an older man, and he felt that was disadvantageous. It was disadvantageous even in his avodas Hashem. He's trying to change the world, to influence the world, an older person puts a case as to why one should change one's life, it comes with a lot more authority than a young person who does that. So Avraham davens for it, and the zikna comes. Clearly, Hashem always wanted there to be old age, and the question is, so why didn't he make the world that way from the beginning? It's one of those things that Hashem wanted us to value before he gave it to us. Realizing that we would always kind of hold it against Hashem, that the process of aging was built into the Bria. He wanted us to realize that the world is missing something, and that we're missing something if we're unable to age in a way that is appropriate to our age. Bear that in mind, and let's move to the medrash brought by the Zkena Mibala Tosfos in Parashas Vayigash about the fact that when Paro asks Yaakov how old he is, and Yaakov answers, I've had a difficult life, I've had much harder life than most people my age, which is why I look so old. And the Medrash says, Amar lo HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ani milataticha me'esav u'milavan v'chzarti lach dina gam Yosef. I saved you from Esav and from Lavan, and I returned Dina to you, and I've returned Yosef to you. You have so much to be grateful. V'ata mitraim al chayecha she'ma'at v'ra'im. And you busy complaining that your life has been so bad and so difficult and so hard, giving no recognition to the good things that have happened in your life. So I'm going to reduce from your allotted life the number of years that are equivalent to the number of words in what you've just said. Asked Reb Chaim Shmulevitz on the Medrash, that's all very good. I understand why Yaakov complaining caused him to have a reduction in life. So the number of words in his complaint, that makes sense that those years should be taken off. But it includes the words in Paro's question. Why is Yaakov responsible for Paro's question? The 33 years that were taken off his life were years that include Paro saying, how old are you? And Reb Chaim brings the Ramban, that nireli ki Yaakov Avinu zarka bo seva v'haya nireh zaken me'od u'faro tamal ziknuto. Yaakov looked so old that Paro felt it necessary to ask him, why are you so old? How old are you? I've never seen anybody that looks so old. It's so strange. It looks weird that you're so old. The fact that he looked older than he was, says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, is the claim that Hashem has against Yaakov. The fact that you allowed your hardships to translate into your facial expression, to your features, that you took on that hardship and made it part of yourself, instead of being able to celebrate the good things too, and to be the person that you are. The fact that Paro was so astonished by how old you looked. We're not entitled to look older than we are. Says Reb Chaim Shmulevitz. Yes, a person's had sorrows, but you move beyond those sorrows and you focus on the good things that have happened to you. And if you focus on the good things that are happening, you can maintain your youthfulness. You don't have to be bogged down by the hardships. And Yaakov is held responsible by Hashem for allowing himself to be bogged down by the hardships of his life to the point that it actually showed on his face. So taking that understanding of the Medrash, the Zkena Mibala Tosfos, and what the Ramban says, and how Reb Chaim Shmulevitz explains it, how does that work with our Gemara with Avraham Avinu? Avraham Avinu has just said to the Rebbeinu, I want old age, make me look old. There's an advantage in being old. I don't want to look young. And here Yaakov is being criticized for looking old. Why doesn't Yaakov answer? I'm just going in the way of my grandfather. My grandfather asked for old age. I'm just asking that it should be there. So to answer that and explain that, let's look at a piece of Gemara on the previous Omud, on Kuf Zayin Amud Aleph. Dorash Rova. Mai dichtiv ki ani letzel anachon u'machovi negdi tamid, re'uya hayta bat sheva bat Eliam leDavid misheshit yimei Bereshit. The shidduch between David HaMelech and Bathsheba was set up at the time of creation. She was destined to be his wife. They were a match, they were a shidduch, it was meant to be that way. The problem was, David acted too early. Had he waited, it would have turned out that way. He would have married Bathsheba. But he accelerated the process. There was a time. It's not that she wasn't the right woman. She was the right woman, and Chazal talk about exactly how it worked. As you know, according to Chazal, Rabbi Isaac Sher talks about it. She was completely divorced. It wasn't a get al t'nai, that in those days before they went to war, they divorced their wives completely. She was a divorcee. So there's no talk, kol ha'omer David chata eno el ha'torah. We can't judge the story of David and Bathsheba on a superficial level. But leaving aside the morality of it and the appropriateness of that marriage, says the Gemara, they were meant to be, but he jumped ahead. What does it mean he jumped ahead? So there's a very important piece of Rabbi Dessler in Michtav Meliyahu, where he talks about timing and how one has to be careful to notice timing. Because there are times when you've got to notice that things are happening and you've got to take advantage of that. There are times when there's a wave that comes and you need to surf the wave. You need to realize this is an opportunity. But there are times when it's not the time to do something. And just as space is a limiting dimension, that you can't be in two places in one, you can't be somewhere else if you're here. There are just limitations as to what you can do because of geography. So there are limitations to what you can do because of time. Time is also a barrier. It also limits us and governs us. Sometimes it adds opportunity and sometimes it detracts from opportunity. And we have to develop a sense of timing. And the times, for example, there are times when we talk about the segulot of the year, when there's a time of the year which is appropriate for certain energy. And in the Rosh Chodesh year, each month, I try to focus on some of the energies of the month that we can tune into so that we're in that period of the year. A Yom Tov, it's even more so, coming at the Chag HaPesach. So we know this is a time of Yetzias Mitzrayim where one can liberate oneself from those things that limit one. There's an opportunity to break loose of limitation during Pesach, and we need to tune into those opportunities and realize this is a time. But there are times when that's not the time, when it's not the right time to break free of limitations, and one has to be able to feel those times. And says Rav Dessler that in the case of David HaMelech, his mistake, his error, if we can understand it, and on any level at all, his error was simply that he wasn't attuned to the fact, wait, yes, she's meant to be my wife. She will be my wife. If it's meant to be, it will be. But it's not the right time for me to intervene at this moment. The nation doesn't know that she's unmarried. Nobody else. They used to give those gittin. Rabbi Isaac Sher says they used to give those gittin in secret. They were done privately. They didn't publicize the fact that she was an unmarried woman, so nobody knew that. And it would get around that David had a relationship with Bathsheba, as it did get around, and people wouldn't realize that Bathsheba was unmarried. She was a divorcee at the time. So you're intervening in a way which is not halachically appropriate at a time which is not correct, because you're just not focused on the fact that the time will come. There's a time for everything, and one has to be able to tune into that time. That idea is something which we've got to be conscious of, not only in physical things, but in Ruchnius as well. The Mishnah says in Pirkei Avos and Perek Vov that there are 48 kinyanim, there are 48 different ways to make Torah our own. We've been talking a lot about that recently, about what one has to invest in Torah to make Torah part of our being, to be able to truly integrate it and make it part of who we are in a way that changes who we are, in a way that grows and develops and evolves who we are and how we experience the world. And one of those 48 is Asamer B'chelko, a person who is able to rejoice in what he has, somebody who is able to take pleasure in that which he has. And Reb Chaim Volozhiner and Ruach HaChaim says that doesn't apply. In this case, it's not talking about Asamer B'chelko in material matters. It's not saying be happy with the house that you've got. You don't need don't allow the ambition to have a bigger house or a bigger job or more money. Don't allow that to deprive you of the pleasure and the joy of what you do have. Very often we're so focused on what we don't have that we don't enjoy what we do have. Samer b'chelko means being able to find pleasure and joy in what you have, whether it's a lot or a little, it doesn't matter. Whatever you have is a source of joy. But Rabbi Chaim Volozhiner learns it here, where we're talking about the kinyanei Torah, how to acquire Torah. He talks about it in the spiritual area. Samer b'chelko ve'eino atz laha'ashir. that you're not trying so hard to get richer in Torah, so that you try and accomplish things in learning that are beyond you. Rather, he learns little by little. He learns a little bit at a time. Until he's reviewed and revised and reviewed and reflected on what he's learned each day, so that it becomes part of him and he understands it and he's mastered it. Instead of that, he wants to hurry up, he wants to know more, he wants to finish more, he wants to get to the end, he wants to finish the daf. That's nice, that's all okay, but don't allow that to ruin the pleasure of what you are learning. That what it is on the daf that you are learning, which is so beautiful and so deep, don't skim over that because you want to turn the page. That's not sameach b'chalko. Sameach, if you've got time to learn the daf as well, that's great, but don't allow your desire to finish the Masechta or to finish Shas, don't allow that ambition to deprive you of the joy b'chalko, of really enjoying what you do have right now in front of you. And you'll end up losing everything. You'll end up even forgetting what you gained. You'll end up gaining nothing from it at all. So that sameach b'chalko is also a part of this principle of tuning into the right time for everything. There's a time, the fact is right now you've got a certain level of wealth, enjoy that. Don't allow the ambition for more to deprive you of that joy. And so in matters of Kodesh, in matters of Torah, you're dealing with a certain part of Torah, you have a certain amount of knowledge, go deeply into it, reflect in it, appreciate it, enjoy it, get the full flavor and the full taste of the Torah that you're learning, so that you don't jump ahead to another area. Therefore, we can go back to the Gemara with Avraham Avinu. Ad Avraham lo haya zikna. So what does Avraham want? Avraham doesn't want to look older than he is. He wants to look as old as he is. It's not a matter of being more. That for when Yaakov confronts Paro and Paro says, "Oh, you look so terribly old. You look much older." It says Yaakov, "I look much older than I am." That's a problem. That's not attractive. To look older than you are is not attractive. You have no right to look older than you are, and he's punished for looking older than he is. But Avraham says, I don't want to look younger than I am either. Says the Rebbeinu Shem, you're right. Looking younger than you are is also not attractive. You don't have the Matmonim, you don't have the kach to be able to use your life experience and your age as part of your aura and as part of the way you're able to influence people. That's not attractive and beautiful. So what is beautiful? Is an old face beautiful, or is a youthful face beautiful? The answer is a youthful face is beautiful for a young person. An old face is beautiful for an old person. It looks distorted in any other kind of way. If you think of it in other areas of nature, we would understand it. Imagine you have a very old dog that's limping, that can hardly drag its feet around, and it looks like a puppy. You don't look at it and say, isn't that beautiful? You say, this is weird. This just doesn't look right. See, a very old person, and he or she has had plastic surgery and the hair is dyed, and it just isn't appropriate. It just doesn't fit. This is a wise person with a lot of life experience, and he looks like a youthful, or she looks like a youthful person who has no life experience. What is going on? The beauty of the Torah is not just what is beautiful and what isn't beautiful. It's what is beautiful in the appropriateness of its context. For an older person to look old is beautiful. For a younger person to look young is beautiful. For a person who knows one Masechta, to know that Masechta well, and to have mastered that Masechta, and to have absorbed it into his being, that's beautiful. For a young person to act as if he knows the whole of Shas, when he's been through Shas a few times maybe, but he knows nothing, that doesn't look beautiful. It doesn't look appropriate. And so again, without belittling the ambition and the value of going and being sensitive to times, we have to be sensitive. Our time is a time when there's a lot of siyata dishmaya to cover volume, to learn. There's such a fortune of learning going on. There's certainly a force and energy in the world that facilitates that kind of learning, but one has to be very tuned into the time that one is in, to the opportunities that one has, to take the opportunities in a given time, because there's an energy in the world or in oneself that facilitates that opportunity, and to hold back when one is at a stage of one's life or a time of the world or of the year when that's not the appropriate opportunity for that time. And to learn how to develop that sensitivity to time so that you won't come to a place of dechikat hasha'ah, as Rav Dessler says, v'lo chash lehergesh hagbalat hazman, that we should be people who are not doichek the shah. We don't push for things that aren't appropriate in that moment, and rather we are sensitive to the limitations of time and to the opportunities that time sometimes presents.